we're here for a reason. We're not here just to indulge ourselves. So if we want to be in harmony with the purpose of life, we must listen to it. Now, we can choose not to, but there will be consequences. There is no cost-free existence. There are consequences whatever we choose. So it's in our interest to listen to what God has said. And ultimately, inshallah, we will be in paradise, and we will see him face to face. And that's an incredible reward.
What's the best form of dawah?
I often find it the easiest thing, this may sound arrogant, but I don't mean it like that. Also, the easiest thing is to win an argument with a Christian, but lose the person. Yeah? I mean, I can bash them over the head with stuff. Yeah? That's relatively easy for me to do, but that's not dawah.
Right.
You're not going to win a person that way. I suppose the first thing to say is to have some kind of epistemic humility. And again, I'm speaking to myself, to realize that it's God who changes hearts. It's not me. It's not my job to convert anyone. It's not my job to persuade anyone. It's not my job to make that person a Muslim. I mean, as the Quran constantly reminds the Prophet, you've been only sent as a warner, not to convert people.
Right.
And it's God who changes hearts. Now, that is true of the Prophet. How much, who am I compared to him? So, my job is clear, and that is just to share or convey Islam and leave the rest to God. But do it in a way, someone like Hamza Zortzis, for example, of IERA and the Sapiens Institute, an English Muslim, who's very, very good on this. And he's learned from his mistakes, as he said, is that, you've got to be very aware of who you're talking to. You've got to befriend them. You've got to care about them. They're not just an object to defeat or argue with or win the argument. Buy them a pizza, take an interest in their lives, care about them, and share Islam. But it's not about winning arguments. And I think because of my experience of Speaker's Corner in London, I often fall into that trap. I'm at my best when I'm not falling into that trap, but I have fallen into that trap where I go in there like some kind of Dawah warrior and you defeat the enemy. But, it's very entertaining on YouTube, perhaps, but it's certainly not Dawah.
Yeah.
It's certainly not the Sunnah of the Prophet, of course.
Right.
And he did Dawah in very, very interesting ways, both verbally and non-verbally. And non-verbal Dawah is good, caring for people.
So there's some talk about King Charles possibly becoming a Muslim. How true is that?
I think there's some truth in it, and there's a falsity about it. So when he became king, which is upon the death of his mother, actually, as soon as Queen died, he instantly became king as the successor. I actually did a video about him and his interest in Islam on Blogging Theology, and it got a huge number of hits because there's an awful lot of actual proof that over the years he's taken a deep interest in Islam. He has a very acute and intelligent understanding of Islam. And the way he speaks of it, I didn't get the impression at all that that for him, Islam was some kind of external thing that is unrelated to himself. He clearly understands it deeply in a very personal way. Now, so in that sense, I think he has a profound grasp of Islam, and in some sense, I suspect, identifies with it. And that this is where the falsity comes in. To my knowledge, I don't know him obviously, but he hasn't said his Shahada, and that he takes his Christian responsibilities as the head of the Church of England in England very seriously. So I think he is like a fellow traveller within the Church, someone who identifies profoundly with Islam. Particularly in its Sufi form, without having said his Shahada. Now, as to what his own personal beliefs are about, say, Jesus and Prophet Muhammad, I don't know, but I suspect he's very close. But I've not seen any evidence he actually has become a Muslim in the sense of saying his Shahada. But he is in a very unique position, obviously, and I think. I would certainly trust him to represent Islam accurately and faithfully in conversations. I get the sense he's very well informed and sympathetic, but I don't think he's crossed over the line. But I could be wrong. Maybe privately he has.
Right.
But I just don't know. See, he has his public role as a constitutional monarch, and his responsibility is his job, if you like.
Right.
And he has to do what it entails. And part of the monarch's role is as head of the church, because we're not officially a secular country, the UK, unlike this place, is America. So our head of state is officially a Christian, constitutionally. So his job has those responsibilities, but privately, who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised. But to my knowledge, there can be no public knowledge of that. It would be a secret.
Right.
On the day of judgment, we will find out, inshallah. So, yeah.
If you had a minute to tell the world about Islam, what would you say?
Well, I'm not sure the world exists. I want to talk to people, and people are different. So how I would talk to a 16-year-old lad compared to, say, a 50-year-old, Harvard graduate, compared to someone who couldn't read and write, compared to, a sister. The world is an abstraction, and I really want to personalize it. Which means, so in the books I recommend, so people often say to me, Paul, what do you recommend? And I'm thinking, well, it all depends, actually. So, Guy Eaton, this writer I mentioned, this English writer, I would only recommend him to certain people with a certain background. Other people, I recommend other kinds of things, right, or maybe a YouTube video. So I really want to tailor it and personalize it. Otherwise, there are slogans or there are abstractions I can share with you. Believe in one God. And this is all true, but I might want to connect that with where you are at. So if you're a Christian, for example, I would say, well, the oneness of God means this. It means Tawheed, not Trinitarianism. If you're an atheist, I would say something different. I would talk about God as the source of all existence, as the meaning and purpose of our lives, and how it's native to our species to believe in the divine. And there's scientific evidence for that. It's intrinsic to children to believe. It's not something that's imposed on people by their parents.
Right.
So it would depend on who I was speaking to. So I'm kind of wary of mega narratives in that way.
What do most non-Muslims misunderstand about Islam?
Well, again, that's a big question depending on their background. But I can see in from a Western point of view, I can't speak about how non-Muslims say in Thailand or Peru, I don't know,
right,
but in the West, they don't understand the spiritual reality of Islam. They see the external media mediated images of angry Muslims, for example. They may see the rage, but they don't understand the cause of it, the dispossession, the powerlessness, the injustice. But Islam, as a faith, if one can speak in those terms, is they don't see the spiritual reality behind it, the depth, the beauty, of it. They don't see that. That may not be their fault. They may not have encountered Muslims, and certainly not the truth about Islam from the media. So they will be judged according to what they know, the light they have, rather than what they don't know. I mean, Al-Ghazali spoke of things like that. What happens to non-Muslims on the Day of Judgment who've never heard about Islam? Well, they'll be judged by the light they have, but no injustice will be done to them. The Quran's very clear on that. Everyone will be treated with perfect justice. No one will be treated unjustly.
If you could ask Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam anything, what would it be?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I have to think about that one. I'd have to pass on that. I would have to think carefully about that. If it was just one question, I had to think very, very carefully. What would you? What would be your? You tell me what you would think.
So I wanted to know what was he thinking about, and how was he worshiping Allah in the cave?
Well, that's interesting. Yes, of course. Yes. What was it like? Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Think of this scenario. It's the Day of Judgment. What would you hope your meeting with Allah would be like?
Yes, I'm quite clear about that. I very much hope, inshallah, that Allah will view me with mercy and compassion, because that's the only thing that will get me into paradise, nothing else. Inshallah, I hope to meet a God of compassion and mercy.